This artist appeared on somebody's timeline and they immediately clocked it for being very suspicious because a lot of timelines and dates that the artist was saying wasn't quite matching up. So this is the post in question and it reads, "Buyer beware, immediately got blocked for calling out this artist, in quotes, for using AI to generate their work. Do not waste your money commissioning or waste your time supporting their sob story of, quote, being fired from their full-time job as an illustrator," end quote. Dude, my cat was literally in my room and then he wanted to leave, so I let him out and then he starts screaming the door down after you wanted to leave. Hello, sir. Anyways, this is Corn. Bye, Corn. They captioned their post, "Recently, I was fired from my job as a full-time illustrator after 3 years. I feel like I don't know where to begin marketing my skill. I'm just a girl in the world." But one thing that's a bit interesting is that this person is 20 years old. So if they were a full-time illustrator at a company for 3 years, and this is something people were pointing out in the comment section, that meant they started working at 17, which, I mean, it's not impossible, but the numbers are not the most clear. And somebody says, 20 years old but fired from her professional illustrator job of 3 years? The math ain't mathing. And another person says, they list their age as 20. Not too many places hiring 17-year-olds as full-time illustrators, even highly skilled ones who don't use AI. I would just ignore them. They would either get better or they'll slop and never improve and never actually get that full-time illustrator job they wish they had. He's being so silly. Look at him. Look at him. You're so cute. And somebody says, would love to know where they were fired from being a full-time illustrator. Those jobs do exist, but are incredibly rare these days. 99.9% of us do it freelance because everyone wants the opportunity to work with different artists for different projects. So secondly, let's take a look at the artwork because the accusation is that the artwork is AI generated. So there's a couple things to kind of keep in mind. One, a lot of it, when it comes to determining is this AI, is it not, you look at the full scope of the artist's portfolio. And in this case, the artist does not have that much work because we only kind of see 2 examples of their work here. Their account, unfortunately, is not available anymore. But one big thing is how accurate are they to drawing the IP to how the IP is supposed to look like? Because if you are somebody drawing, you know, Pokemon or Genshin Impact characters or whatever, I don't know, wouldn't you look up a reference photo instead of making up how the Pokemon looks like? The very first one is Tangela. Tangela has feet. This is how Tangela looks like. They are this like little blue noodly blob, but they do have 2 red feet on the bottom. You might argue maybe because of the pose she's holding the feet, but because Tangela is kind of looking up, at this angle, you should see at least 1 foot, if not both feet here, and those are missing. But maybe we can give benefit of doubt here. The second thing then that I would bring up the argument of is Tangela's noodles, okay? I'm sure there's probably a better term for it, but there are artwork and depiction, right, of Tangela having the little like noodles kind of coming out. They attach back to Tangela. They don't just like loop around the neck like a choker here. What is happening here? Because this part is just odd because that's not how Tangela's little noodly things work. So either they just have like a strong lack of knowledge of how the Pokemon works in the first place, or they just literally never looked up a reference photo, or they generated the image. Again, we can look at other oddities in the piece. Again, we have a slight odd fingernail happening here. You might argue, okay, maybe that is human error. Here, I could give benefit of doubt for human error as well, possibly, because one finger might be blocked. Now, I would still argue maybe in this pose, the fingertip for the index finger would probably still be visible if this is how it's being held, kind of like that. But we could give benefit of doubt. Maybe it's like bent in the back. Another oddity we have here is, again, Tangela's little noodles, right? Why is there like a noodle coming here and then it just kind of melts into the arm and there's a bunch of blue here afterwards? Maybe the artist colored outside the lines accidentally. The big one though is the arm that is melting into her face. This one is most definitely much harder to explain away. Next up, we have this art piece. Trying to share my Jinx commission in different ways to see what actually gets some engagement. If you see this, please at least give it a like. And it's somebody making a kissy face with Jinx, who is another Pokemon. The first thing again is the misspelling of Jinx. Jinx is spelled Jynx in Pokemon, but it could be you know, to be honest, I always spell it with an I as well, because I always forget it's a Y. But the oddity that comes in is this. Jinx does not have a neck. If you see Jinx's Pokemon artwork, Jinx's head essentially goes straight into the body, where the clothing is. These are some more images of Jinx, more images of Jinx. In no world have I at least ever seen Jinx depicted in official media with a neck. So this again would indicate that no reference photo was ever looked at. There's an oddity there. Also, the coloring of Jinx is also off because Jinx's skin is purple in the revised version, and their lips is a very like baby pink. And the skin tone of Jinx is just completely off here. So that one is also a little bit interesting where it's again like, okay, our character is also not quite fully accurate to the lore. And again, people make mistakes. Just because you drew a character and you missed like an element or two doesn't mean that you used AI, etc., right? So that's one thing to add. But if it comes to a case where you already have multiple pieces where there's these oddities, where the character's almost there, but it's just a little bit off. It's kind of like, bit interesting. Alongside other elements, like again, Tangle as like noodle arm melting into the jawline. And this one is interesting. So OP commented under their post, essentially calling them out, writing, "This is an AI generated image and not an actual illustration as it's being advertised." Now, the artist whose handle was La Delphine says, "Are you slow? Not everyone draws like a second grader." And OP says, "Interesting choice of words. The other work you've posted on Threads indicates none of your work is actually drawn, and as I said in my previous comment, that it's generated. It has nothing to do with the watercolor style." Which again, I don't like this statement in particular with like the implications you're putting there. And the artist also posted to their own threads before they deleted their account, writing, "Where are all the artists accused of using AI because you don't draw like a 4-year-old?" And another person had commented something on their thread about it being generated with AI, and they once again commented, "Are you slow?" Somebody added, "They removed all of their posts and claim they will post time-lapse videos, so we can only wait and see." And allegedly, commissions were taken that weren't delivered on. Somebody said, "How would anybody even fall for this BS when the Pokemon aren't even generated correctly?" Which I also want to add again, like, if you are an artist, it might be easy for you to spot generative AI and be like, well, it's so obvious a Pokemon look like this or that. But if you're not an artist, you don't know what you don't know. And it's not going to be easy for you to spot generative AI or something that is an art scam if you yourself aren't in the industry. So just have a little bit of empathy, I would say, for people who got scammed, because people who get scammed are victims of the scammer. And a lot of times people who commission artwork themselves are not artists, which is why they're looking to commission an artist. And generative AI is getting harder and harder to spot by the day. So for people who aren't familiar with art, it would be more difficult for them to spot it out. They're just being scammed. It sucks. And OP writes, "Unfortunately, I've had 2 people reach out to me who have been scammed by this person. Not everyone is good at detecting this stuff, which is understandable and why I'm posting for awareness." One other thing people are noting is that she doesn't even claim it's digital, but that she's a watercolor artist, as if watercolors ever turn out that clean. I think that point is also very interesting to note because they do say professional watercolor artist, but these are digital images. These are not watercolor images. And you could obviously use watercolor brushes and watercolor textures in a digital system like Procreate, etc. I feel like typically when you say watercolor artist, people are assuming you do traditional work, traditional paintings that are scanned in, because you would see the texture of the painting, the lighting, etc. This is a digital work. So that's also one interesting discrepancy here. But OP adds, "If you have the time, please take a look at this person's Cash App." And sorry, I need to censor my words on YouTube because YouTube has words they like and don't like, and this is one of them. "They have accepted payments for 2 commissions they never delivered, as far as I'm aware, to this account." And about the not delivering work, somebody adds, "Thank God I found this. I commissioned her for my fursona and she kept making excuses. I can't show the DMs because she deleted the account. And she uses Cash App under the same name, by the way." And that's always the worst part about these situations, right? Because either you don't get what you paid for, you pay for what you thought was human art and you get some slop, or you get nothing at all and you just got scammed out of X amount of money by the scammer who has no intention of delivering on what they were promising you. So again, stay aware, stay diligent. And a couple of things again to spot or look out for is if the account is absolutely brand new, all of a sudden has fully fleshed artworks coming out, and they don't have any other presence on social media. Like they never had any other accounts. This is just a brand new one that comes out. So, because sometimes, you know, an artist has like presence on other social media platforms, but they just made a Threads recently. That I'm not saying that's the case, right? But they never had a presence. All of a sudden, super fleshed out artwork, posting a lot of art every single day, like immediately out the gate asking for commissions. Because sometimes, again, artists will have a backlog. They slowly post their backlog after a while, but immediately ask for commissions. The stuff that they're posting, they're drawing IP, but their artwork never fully draws the IP correctly. And they're also claiming experience way above the pay grade that they should be at. Like, again, claiming 3 years of full-time illustrator job experience at 20 years old, which means, again, you would be be hired at 17. Full-time illustrator jobs are already extremely rare, and to be hired for one at 17 is unlikely. So all of that combined together makes it a little bit suspicious. So just keep that in mind when commissioning artists. Stay safe, stay diligent. And again, don't send hate to any parties involved, but this is to bring awareness to people who might unfortunately have got caught in a situation similar to this. If you like this video, I appreciate it if you like and subscribe. Don't forget to check me out on Etsy. I have digital art there for streamers and creators. I also have a coffee with free resources like a free sponsorship guide. And I stream on Twitch 3 days a week, Mondays and Saturdays 6 p.m. or Thursdays at 7:30. It's a podcast with my friend. So I hope to catch y'all there or in another video. Peace.